Welcome to another in our Locktober series of podcasts. I'm Primal Piggy, your host of this BDSM United podcast. There are two aspects of chastity. The first is orgasm control. It's the simplest of the two aspects. It involves the keyholder simply deciding when the chaste submissive is permitted to have an orgasm. Nothing more. In other words, you'll be in charge of the keys to their chastity device, since it's practically impossible for them to have any kind of orgasm while properly wearing a fitting chastity device. You must release them from chastity in order for them to get any sort of real satisfaction, sexually speaking. Simply being a key holder does not obligate you to do anything other than decide when they may have an orgasm. The second aspect of chastity is called tease and denial. And this is a really fun aspect of chastity. And this might be what your partner was thinking about most when they asked you to be a key holder. Perhaps they want you to do everything that you can think of to sexually tease and still deny an orgasm. But exactly how much you choose to do or not to do is still your choice. Tease and denial can be a very time consuming thing. It all depends on how much of it and what type you choose to do. Understand that you, as the dominant partner, can do as much or as little tease and denial as you like. You might not choose to use a chastity device at all. This form of mental bondage is like the honor system. If you choose not to use a device of any kind, you'll need to have complete faith that they will not cheat. It might require you to put in place additional rules and protocols to prevent arousal, touching the genitals, and having orgasms. This may be more than just controlling their physical actions. It may involve rules for their time, their dress code, their exercise, their recreation, and privacy. It can involve special routines or rituals to assist in avoiding temptation. Now, as this being an episode on key holders and dominance, let's talk about some types of behavioral change that'll take place utilizing chastity. Operant conditioning is based on four concepts for dealing with proper and bad behavior. No one by itself is really enough. Number one is positive reinforcement, and that's getting something pleasant, like a weekly paycheck or a compliment. Number two is a negative reinforcement. That's taking away or avoiding something unpleasant, like avoiding stress by not trying for a position. Number three is positive punishment. That's administering or receiving something unpleasant. A popular type of positive punishment is being spanked. Number four is a negative punishment. This is taking away or being deprived of something pleasant, such as being denied TV or a fun activity or using the car. It may be helpful to understand reinforcements and punishments and how they apply to changing behavior. There are five basic processes in operant conditioning. There's positive and negative reinforcement, which strengthen behavior, punishment, response cost, and extinction, which weakens behavior. Number one, positive reinforcement. In positive reinforcement, a positive reinforcer is added after a response and increases the frequency of the response. Number two is a negative reinforcement. In negative reinforcement, after the response, the negative reinforcer is removed, which increases the frequency of the response. Um, Note there are two types of negative reinforcement: escape and avoidance. In general, the learner must first learn to escape before he or she learns to avoid. Number three is the response cost. If positive reinforcement strengthens a response by adding a positive stimulus, then response cost has to weaken a behavior by subtracting a positive stimulus. After the response, the positive reinforcer is removed, which weakens the frequency of the response. Number four, punishment. After response, a negative or aversive stimulus is added, which weakens the frequency of the response. Punishment is what we typically think of when we think of behavior change within BDSM. But some of these others may be things that you want to look further into. We didn't really give a uh, really great explanation of all of these concepts, but we're just introducing them to you so that you can go in your own time and look up what some aspects of response cost or negative reinforcement or positive reinforcement may look like. Number 5 is extinction. No longer reinforcing a previously reinforced response. Using either positive or negative reinforcement results in the weakening of the frequency of the response. Behavior is ignored and therefore weakens over time. This is true where a reinforcer is expected for behavior. So, what does this practically look like for a dominant partner creating an environment of chastity? Well, let's borrow from some BDSM slave training, which to help us out. And some of this slave training will be in a future podcast that's really coming soon, as we revamp our regular slave training and kind of had to have a 2.0 coming soon. That's just a little sneak peek for you listening today. Some techniques used for behavioral change in slave training are behavior rehearsal, forcing to act in an appropriate way as a slave. Number 2 is modeling, modeling the example of other slaves, their peers. Number 3 is non reinforcement, and that's not rewarding bad behavior. Number 4 is positive reinforcement. That's rewarding good behavior. Number 5 is punishment. Punishment for bad behavior after discussing and admitting the bad behavior. Number 6 is discipline training. Practice the correct behavior and observe and make corrections. Number 7 are slave rules or contracts. These are guidelines for behavior that are already laid out. Number 8 is recording and self monitoring. Journal entries to record good and bad behavior. Number 9 is stimulus control, removing the stimulus that causes or the stimulus of bad behavior. Number 10 is communication training, learning to communicate deep thoughts and feelings, being open and being transparent. Number 11 is social skills development. And this is practicing the skills they have both in public and the skills they have in private. Number 12 are contracts to change behavior, including desired change, rewards, and punishments, all in a contract that was in our previous podcast episode. Number 13 is a token economy. This involves tokens gained by proper behavior, and after a certain number is earned, a reward is received. Tokens can also be removed for bad behavior. This is kind of the idea of rewards. So there's punishments and rewards, and also of consequences. There's a lot to consider as the dominant partner in a relationship and in a relationship dynamic that involves kinks such as chastity. Let's end with these 3 truths about the mindset needed to make chastity a success in your power exchange. Number 1, BDSM is designed around much more than just behavioral modification. However, behavioral modification training can't be ignored. During the training process, the Dom establishes their ownership of the sub's space, privacy, time, physical actions, and interpersonal relationships. Number 2, the BDSM assumes that each submissive at some point makes a choice decision. By that, we mean assuming that each sub will at some point in their training decide to allow the Dom the authority to make choices for the sub. The submissive decides that the choice now belongs to the dominant, and their choice, the choice, is to obey. Number 3, This choice decision is not reached with most subs by behavioral modification alone. It requires a change in the sub's private logic. And private logic is the way we see ourselves, others, and life, and is our personal philosophy that our lifestyle is based on. It is our innermost beliefs that affect higher level thinking, emotions, and behavior. Private logic is not changed by behavioral modification alone. So this was just kind of an overview of the types of training and the types of things that you may be thinking of if you are asked to be a key holder in a chastity scenario, or in chastity in a or by adding chastity to your already established relationship dynamic. You'll want to definitely consider the kink and integrate it into the type of training that you already have in place in with your submissive partner. I'm Primal Piggy. You have been listening to the BDSM United podcast in our Locktober series. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a like, a subscribe, possibly a review on your favorite platform, hopefully the platform that you're listening on right now. This allows you to connect with us, and it also allows other adults to find these types of free BDSM resources. I'm Primal Piggy. You can find me on Facebook at The Primal Piggy. It's all one word. You can find me on Whips, Chains, and Duct Tape, also on Facebook at WCDT BDSM, and of course on the web at www.bdsmunited.com. Thanks for listening today, and I'll talk to you again soon.